Mother Africa. She was Mother Africa. She was Mother. She was our Queen Mother. Born in 1936, Winnie Mandela embarked on a career of social work that led to her involvement in activism. She married ANC leader Nelson Mandela in 1958, though he was imprisoned for most of the 4 decades of their marriage. She became president of the ANC Women's League and served in the parliament. However, her accomplishments are not based on a bio or a resume. With her love for the people, that's right. Her commitment to the people, her courage, that's right. in the face of unspeakable hostility and violence and evil and racism by the government and their fiefdom, led to her being under attack most of her adult life. But she still reigned as a queen. She was royal in her posture, strongly committed to her God and her people. She never wavered from her commitment. Her heart and her soul was tied in with the people of Africa. She was Mother Africa, Queen Mother Helen Moore.
Well, I guess I'll just have to tell this story my own way, because I actually knew her. You all didn't know that. I'm on the board, Selma, Alabama, and I'm on the Voting Rights Museum. I was in charge of getting together Jubilee in 2010. And I was working down there, and many of you didn't even know I would fly down on the weekend and I would come back on Sunday night. And we were coordinating, getting everything together for Bloody Sunday celebration. Reverend Rose asked me to do this, Rose Sanders, and it was a pleasure for me to do this, but we ran into a problem. We wanted to have someone really, really great as a speaker and someone that we needed to honor for the Jubilee. So we had all kinds of names, and we got down to the very end, and it was almost time for our celebration. We still didn't have anybody. Just when we were getting ready to say, okay, we'll accept a certain person from Washington, D.C., we got the word that Winnie Mandela had accepted and she was coming to Selma, Alabama. So I'm in the office of the museum and I'm saying, oh my God, Winnie Mandela's coming. I got all excited, everybody else did too, but we didn't know what to do. We thought, look, I gotta be Queen Winnie Mandela, we gotta have all this together for her after all the things that she's gone through and done for our people. Winnie Mandela showed up. Now I can't remember Ola's mother's name, but she had the restaurant right on the front street where the museum was. And so we set up for her to arrive in this wonderful plantation. Well, it was empty, but they used it sometime to rent out to dignitaries, so she was our dignitary. So we rented it. And Winnie Mandela came in, and we got Ola's mother to be there with her and to fix all the food for her and to make her comfortable. And I was to run in and out to see if she needed anything, etc. To my surprise, when she showed up, she just stood there and looked at us and smiled at all of us. Very graceful. And I thought she was going to look like JoAnn here with all this magnificent, had everything on. She came in her little regular clothes, and we were nervous. We didn't know how to deal with her. But guess what? She reminded me of Rosa Parks when I first met her. Just humble, just a person that was just one of us. And so we took good care of her, and she was so gracious. But when I went over there the next day, she had her clothes on. Guess what? She had some house shoes on, and what I call is a house dress. You know how we dress around the house. That's what I was looking for all this gold and silver and everything. That was not her. But the day she made the speech, I went over there with Ola's mama, and I looked at her, and there she was in all her glory. This is in the paper that we sent out in Selma, Alabama, and it's a picture of her. She was all wrapped in glorious, just everything, and she was a queen indeed. But she never stood out and made us feel that she was different than us. So what was she there for? She was there to be inducted into the Hall of Resistance at the Slavery and Civil War Museum in Selma, Alabama. Later, Miss Mandela was honored with the Freedom Flame Award at the Selma Convention Center. The Jubilee is held annually during the first week in March to commemorate Bloody Sunday, the day Alabama state troopers attacked voting rights marchers on the Edmund Pettus Bridge on March the 7th, 1965. The event also celebrates the voting rights movement and the passage of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. You all remember that when all of you, some of you were involved with us when we filed our suit using the Voting Rights Act. The Jubilee theme was Education, the Bridge Out of Poverty. Winnie Mandela is known across the world as the woman who tirelessly campaigned for an end to apartheid and for the release of her former husband, Nelson Mandela, from prison, despite the harsh treatment she received at the hands of the apartheid officials who banned and imprisoned her. At one time, she was put into solitary confinement on death row. Winnie Mandela ignored the ban and visited her husband at Robben Island, where he was in prison. She was involved with the 1976 Soweto uprising and was sentenced to jail. After her release, she was not allowed to go back to Soweto. The apartheid government exiled her to Brantford, where she was forced to remain for 9 years. She endured assaults on her house and received numerous death threats. Yet she again ignored the ban and left Brantford to visit her husband. Winnie Mandela enjoys tremendous support among South Africans, and especially among the majority, its poor people. She always remained to be respected across the world for her mighty sacrifices. Her Soweto home, where she lived with Nelson Mandela before her imprisonment and their children, was bombed several times and set fire during the period of Nelson Mandela's imprisonment. The homes where she lived in South Africa are now museums, including her residence in Brantford, where she was exiled. She was a member of Parliament and continued to be one of the most popular members of the African National Congress. Winnie Mandela secured 5th place on the ANC's electoral list for the 2009 general election, behind party president and was current president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma. Winnie Mandela was featured from the front page of the New York Times 20th anniversary for Nelson Mandela released from prison. She never forgot who she was.
That's right.
She never forgot her people.
That's right.
And when she even came to the United States, she was just Winnie Mandela.
Yes.
So today, it gives me great pleasure to honor our warrior and trailblazer, Winnie Mandela, our real warrior.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have, among all the warriors in this community, there is no greater warrior than Dr. Gloria and Neb House. And we wanted to just say a word about the significance of word.
Thank you, Sister JoAnn, Queen Mother JoAnn. I didn't prepare for this honor, so I will just speak from my heart. I had the good fortune to live in South Africa from 1992 to 1996. Those were the years of the takeover, the change, and the move into ANC government, and to witness the love that the people had for Queen Mother Winnie. They understood that she had been their hope, their tenacity. She had represented their self-determination. She had suffered, I would dare say, even more than our great Nelson Mandela, in that she was imprisoned and brutalized and abused for years. She was separated from her children. Her heart was broken in that separation. And all of those personal injuries did not keep her from remaining true to the people. She was instrumental in writing the Freedom Charter, and when other ANC leaders turned away from that commitment to the poorest of the poor, Winnie did not. Winnie remained steadfast in her commitment to working for, fighting for those who had the least of all. And I saw her in that exchange, that relationship that she had with the people. Everyone loved, respected, held Winnie in the highest esteem. She was our Queen Mother Africa. I loved her from a distance, and then when I had the good fortune of meeting her, was honored to be able to embrace her. In fact, Brother, who's here taking photographs now, actually made a really beautiful photograph of a visit that Winnie had here in Detroit, of me and other sisters meeting with her, and this was a wonderful, wonderful memory that I'll always cherish. Long live Queen Mother Winnie Mandela.
That was a powerful presentation from the sister. Yes.
Well, we thank you so very much. Let's give them a hand and thank them again. Mr. Winnie Mandela. Now I can say it best when they say it again. It ain't about the babies. What is this really all about? So we want to climax this portion of our program, bringing on the babies, the children, our newer dance and drummers. Let's give them a hand as they come.
He is a research professor and director of the Institute for Urban Research at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. And you should know that this wonderful university is going to host the annual Takeover convention. That's the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, just a month from today. And we have the Takeover Detroit leader in the house. Winbush is one of 5 children, and he's the middle of 3 sons born to Harold Winbush, a Cleveland, Ohio steelworker, and Dorothy Winbush, a housewife. A depressed economy, low wages, and racism produced financial hardships for the family, and in 1948, the year of Winbush's birth, the family left Pittsburgh and moved to the east side of Cleveland to begin anew. At the request of his elementary school art teacher, Ray Winbush was tested and scored high on the Stanford Binet IQ test. Life changed for Dr. Raymond A. Winbush when he was blessed to have access to another level of education. He was bused from his Huff Avenue neighborhood to an accelerated school in a middle-class access academic center. And at 12, Dr. Winbush realized the difference between his educational experiences and those of his brothers. Much of his early education is detailed in his first book, The Warrior Method. That's just his first book. He graduated from Cleveland's John Adams High School in '66 and entered Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama, where he won consecutive Ford Foundation Intensive Summer Studies Program scholarships to Harvard and Yale universities in '68 and '69, respectively. In 1970, Winbush graduated with honors and received his BA in psychology from Oakwood, and later served the college as professor and chair of behavioral sciences from '73 until '77. Dr. Raymond A. Winbush earned his master's and his Ph.D. in clinical psychology from the University of Chicago. His thesis, a quantitative exploration into proxemic behavior. It was a study of the cross-cultural differences of spacing behavior in public. His dissertation, a quantitative exploration into the theoretical formulations of Erik H. Erikson concerning Black identity, examined Erikson's 5th age of man and empirically refuted Erikson's racist ideas concerning identity development in young blacks. After serving as chair and assistant professor of behavioral science at Oakwood University and associate professor of psychology at Alabama A&M University, Winbush was named assistant provost and adjunct professor in the Department of Psychology at Vanderbilt University. From June 1986 until July 1989, he was the first director of the Joseph Johnson Black Cultural Center at Vanderbilt and was instrumental in examining enrollment and the retention of African Americans and other students of color at the university. Between '75 and 2001, Dr. Ray Winbush's research established numerous projects to raise the awareness of America's race relations and their impact on the lives of Black people. He received grants to further his education and his work with the National Science Foundation, the Cleveland Foundation, Job Training Partnership Act, Pitney Bowes, Ford Motor Company, and the Kellogg Foundation. From '95 to 2002, Dr. Ray Winbush was a Benjamin Hooks Professor of Social Sciences and Director of the Race Relations Institute at Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. Since 2002, he has been the Research Professor and the Director of the Institute for Urban Research at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland. And in that same year, he aided in establishing the Global African Congress. He aided in building and formulating and instituting the Global African Congress, the largest Pan-African organization in the world. Winbush's research, his consultations, his speaking engagements have gained him worldwide visibility. In addition to his diversity workshops, his discussions on reparations, and keynote addresses on race relations, he's been before Prince University, Yale University, Harvard University, Washington College, the Boeing Corporation, Columbia University Law School, New York University, the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, and others. He lectured on racism and the global context at Murdoch University in Perth, Western Australia, the Amsterdam, Netherlands, and at the University of London School of Education. By 2000, he had helped organize the first international conference of the National Council for Black Studies in Ghana. Dr. Ray Winbush appeared as the race relations expert on the Oprah Winfrey Show in 2005. His books include The Warrior Method, a program for rearing healthy Black boys, Should America pay? We know the answer to that. Slavery and the Raging Debate on Reparations, which was published in 2001 and 2003 respectively. His latest book, Belinda's Petition, A Concise History of Reparations for the Transatlantic Slave Trade, is considered a prequel to Should America Pay. He is the preeminent scholar, academician, activist, author, professor. There is no brother bad on reparations. Who is the head of a major department of a major university. He's in a class by himself. Let us stand and call his name. Winbush! 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 Welcome to Afrikan, my brother.
Well. First of all, ain't it good to be African? If you think it's good to be African, just say it's good to be African. And you also see why Queen Mother, JoAnn Watson, that I always consult her about a lot of stuff. I remember when I was putting together Should America Pay, I couldn't get in contact with John Conyers. And so I got, I don't know anything about this technology. We'll start. And I got in contact, she actually wrote the chapter. I shouldn't be saying this publicly, but she actually wrote the chapter that John Conyers has his name on. Don't tell anybody I said that, okay? And also bring, it's good to see, all of what you do here in Detroit. African Liberation Day is just celebrated all over all over the world, man.
That's right. Yeah.
And Brother Paul Taylor, you should be very, very, you should be very, very, okay, gotcha. Very, very, just to give everybody a hand, okay?
All
Just
right,
give everybody a hand. Brother Charles Farrell, Sister Jessica Brown, and several members here at the museum as well, and all of their help in co-sponsoring this.
That's right.
I bring you greetings. I'm going to do this quick because I know you've been sitting and everything like that. I want to first of all bring you greetings from Morgan State University in Baltimore, where I teach. If you like music, we gave the world Denise Williams.
That's right.
Y'all remember Denise Williams?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think it was here for the Bois or something like that. If you like business, we gave the world Earl Graves, the founder and editor of Black Enterprise magazine.
That's right.
If you like politics, we gave the world Kwesi Mfume, the former head of the NAACP. But our greatest gift was a sister who graduated there from our high school in 1918 by the name of Zora Neale Hurston. If you haven't read Their Eyes Were Watching God, you've missed half your life. And I'm not talking about that stuff that Halle Berry did a few years ago on TV, so read.
That's right. That's right.
Read Their Eyes Were Watching God. So I'm going to go through this. When I turned 50 years old, as somebody said, people start calling me Elder and Baba. One day, one of my sisters said, Baba Winbush. I said, oh, I've reached that age now. So it was a turning point in my life, since I would now be viewed as a person who knew a little bit about life and could tell others what I believed, what I thought, and what they should do. But most of all, I could tell others what I have learned about being African, the world, and how I understood how racism, white supremacy work. So what I'm going to do, and you may want to take out your pencils and paper if you have some, to jot some of these things down. I've been developing this over the past couple of years, and several people have asked me for. I need to put it up on the web so people can get it. So what I'm going to do this evening is quickly give you 50 things. 50, 5-0. I'm going to spend 30 seconds on each one of them, so that's 25 minutes, to be true. And they are 50 things I believe myself, and they are 50 things I think can be a guiding principle to learn how to be African. Is it a complete list? No, but it can be used to guide us into centering our African selves. They are doable, practical, and easily taught. Now, some of the things I'm going to list, some of y'all are going to get mad, okay? But I'm going to still say it, then I'm going to leave, okay? So the first one is right up on the board. Y'all know who this is up here? Yeah. Who's that on the left?
Neely Fuller
Neely
Jr.
Fuller. Who's that in the middle?
Francis Cress Wells.
I'll say more about Dr. Welsing in a minute. That's me on the other side. Those I consider those are my teachers. Those are my teachers. And as Neely Fuller said, let's repeat it, if you do not understand racism, white supremacy, what it is and how it works, you will be confused by everything you think you understand. That is so important. See, I don't say things like, you know, Kanye West is crazy. Kanye West is confused. So is Clarence Thomas. So is Ben Carson. It's because they don't understand how racism, white supremacy works. So I say I'm going to spend 30 seconds. So let's go to the next one. Let's see here. All right. You should read at least 30 minutes a day something about Africa. That's right. 30 minutes, that's all I'm asking. My students at Morrison said, Dr. Woman, that's a lot. I said, look, you look at Empire for an hour. And this other stuff, I don't even want, what's that show on Thursday night? How to Kill Everybody. What's it called? How to get away with murder. Okay, all of that mess. 30 minutes a day, something about Africa. The third one, volunteer at least 4 hours a month in direct service to Africans. Educational institutions, prisons, homeless shelters, do something. Just volunteer. Don't get paid for it, just do it. Number 4, if you go to a church, mosque, or a synagogue, make sure that it is African-centered. If you have a picture of a white Jesus hanging up on a cross, you're in the wrong church. And if you are going to the church like that, you should tell the minister, this is not right. And tell them it's not right. I wish I had time to go into all of these, but I'm not. Number 5, make at least one trip in your lifetime to Africa. You know, I have some of my friends, not many of them, they'll say, we're going to Paris this summer, or we're going to London. Why don't you go to Accra? Go to Johannesburg, you see, and see where Winnie lived and Nelson lived. So those, go to Africa at least once a year, and I'm going to tell you how to get there in a few minutes. Number 6, eat healthfully. Now I'm going to say some more about this too. I ain't going to talk about obesity right now, all of these things, but eat healthfully. Number 7, read the ISIS paper by Dr. Francis Cress Wells. A group of us right now through Black Plastics Press, Paul Coates, we're putting together a book on Dr. Welsing that'll be out in the latter part of this year. Reverend Jeremiah Wright's in it, Chuck D from Public Enemy is in it, and several other people that we're including their perspective of Dr. Welsing. She was, again, one of my teachers and a dear friend, and when we lost her a few years ago, it was a great loss to all of us. The next one, exercise daily. Notice I didn't say weekly or monthly or yearly. Exercise daily, just walk. Just walk. The next one, understand that 95% of Africans' problems are due to us not being organized. That's almost a direct quote from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He says that 95% of black people's problems, we ain't organized. We're just not organized. I said I was going to stick to this, so I'm going to elaborate a little bit. Now this one, next one might get some people. Number 10, stop smoking. Just stop smoking. That's a preventable disease, lung cancer. And I have a personal issue with this because my mother, my father, and my oldest brother died of smoking, of lung cancer, all of them. So stop smoking. If somebody asks you, do you mind if you smoke? If I smoke, say, yes, I do. Please don't do it around me. Number 11, read your Rugu. How many read that book? By Marimba Ani. She's going to be a contributor of the book on Francis Cress Welsing too. The next one, see, some of these are all of these are very practical. Drink at least 5 glasses of water a day. Some of us drink Pepsi and Coke. It ain't wrong with having that once every while, but drink water. Just drink water. Number 13, read the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey. How many of you read that? Study it. I'm going to tell you how to do all this in a second. Number 14, learn a second language, preferably one from Africa. You know, if I get lost in Ghana, if I get lost in France, if I get lost in Germany, I don't know why I would go there, but if I did get lost there, most people speak English. But if a Ghanaian gets lost in Detroit, most of us can't speak Tree, which is the language of Ghanaian. We should learn a second. How many of you know, you may not know it thoroughly, but how many of you know, say, I can get along pretty well in Spanish or French or Swahili or something like that. And it's easier now to learn a language. You can learn these things on your cell phone. They got these programs like Babbel and everything that you can learn it real quick. Number 15, understand that there are only 3 types of people on earth. This is directly from Neely Fuller. White people, white supremacists, and non-white people. You see that guy in the bottom right, you know who that is. These are white supremacists, and you can prove this empirically. So there's white people, that, you know, Mr. Fuller always said, he said, are all white people racist? He says, I don't know, because he's never done surveys of all of them. But there are white supremacists among the white people. Number 16, if possible, wear clothing that was made in Africa at least 1 day per week, at least 1 day. Now some people always wear that. I've never seen Mama JoAnn not in African clothing. You always dress like that, and that's good. Number 17, when I walk into your home where you live, I should recognize that it is inhabited by an African. Your home should reflect that for your children. I mean, if I walk in the home and I see a picture of Marilyn Monroe, and I see just, I don't know, white sheets all over the place with, I don't know, northern tissue looking white girls and stuff like that. You know, I'm not in an African home. Surround yourself with things that are African. Number 18, listen to John Coltrane's A Love Supreme at least twice a year. She rated it. You said what now? That's your favorite album of all time. We're going to have some more music in a minute. You should just listen to it. It's sublime. You know, there's a church, Queen Mother, in San Francisco called St. John the Divine. And they give homage every Sunday to John Coltrane. And if you listen to, I ain't got time. I wish I could talk about each of these in depth. I'm going to keep going. Number 19, do not refer to any African music as old school. That's right. That's what the system of white supremacy wants you to do. That's right. See, we have, you know, I have some of my students at Morgan, I'll say, do you like Chuck D from Public Enemy? He said, oh, Doc, that's old school. See, you never hear white folks saying things like, what's that old skinny guy, Mick Jagger. You don't ever hear white folks say Mick Jagger's old school, or the Beach Boys are old school, or they still worshiping Elvis, and he's been dead I don't know how long. So they never refer to their music as old school. They try to get us to refer to our music as if it is dated. So don't ever call our music old school. Number 20. What I say? Now, I know ain't nobody in here eating pork, so I know y'all don't eat pork in Detroit. They eat pork in Baltimore, but I know anybody in here eat pork. Put the ribs away, and I know this is Memorial Day weekend, but y'all setting yourself up for a heart attack. Don't do that. Okay, I told you I can say this and then I can leave. Number 21. Have at least one Pan-African project you engage in during your life. sending books to a school, donating to a specific organization that is Pan-African, buying a Larian that's for African children. That last one, I spend $20 a month with a thing called Nothing But Nets. And it buys the #1 killer of black children or African children on the continent is not AIDS, it is malaria. In fact, the #1 animal on earth that kills people, not a lion or a tiger or anything like that, it's a mosquito. So I donate to, and I've been doing it for many, many years, so have at least one that directly ties into the continent. Number 22, pay yourself first by saving at least $30 a week, for 20 years, and you will have $31,000. Did you know that? Pay yourself first. Save $5 and don't touch it. I've got a habit and learned it from a friend of mine. When you go to the store, you don't carry money around the way you used to, but just take the money, the change from yourself, put it in a jar. You'd be surprised after a year or two, it'll amount up to a couple $100. So pay yourself first. Number 23, up until the age of 13, you should have your children read out loud to you for 10 minutes a day. Now the reason why I say that, because we know that children psychologists know that children like to be heard while they are reading. So just read to your children out loud until the age of 13. Make sure you be reading too, but we'll be going over it. This next one, I don't even know if I should have put it up there because I know y'all already do this. Only buy black dolls for your children. That's the only dolls you should, look, and make sure the dog looks black. Like Barbie, they got Barbie that looks like a white girl, like a chocolate-covered white girl or something like that. Buy black dolls, and there's so many of them out there right now. So many of them right now. Then the next one, some of y'all are going to flinch on this one. Learn to shoot a handgun, a rifle, and an automatic weapon. I didn't say shoot anybody with that. I said learn to shoot. And it's interesting that white people always got the NRA, and this idiot in the White House is saying things like, just shoot people, whatever. You see him yesterday, he said, about kneeling before with the NFL and the flag, and he said something about, if you don't do it, maybe you should leave the country. What he was really saying, because most of the athletes in the NFL are black, he's really saying go back to Africa in a very subtle way. And I have told these brothers in the NFL, I said, all y'all got to do, instead of like every week we have 2 or 3, I said 1 week, all the players need not to show up. That's right. Just 1 week, one Sunday. Just one Sunday. They don't have to do it every week, just one Sunday, and the NFL will do anything they say. But basically, what this idiot said, what's his name? That other one, the head of the NFL, whatever his name. Goodell said, he basically said, look, if you're black, you got to do exactly what we want. You're a slave, you see? So don't, and I've been trying to talk to some people about this. Just strike one Sunday. Just one Sunday. That's all they got to do. Number 26, never stay in a room where people are using illegal drugs. Because when the cops come, they're going to pick everybody up. And you're going to say, it wasn't me. Number 27, don't forget that a mind is a terrible thing to waste. These are some people that are wasting their mind. Ben Carson. He's from Baltimore. I got a friend of mine that knows him well. And he's from Detroit, but he lives in Baltimore now, as you know. And that's where he is from, Detroit. What was that book that he wrote, Gifted Hands, and now they're saying that he said that he might have been lying about some of the things. I don't know what did happen to Ben Carter, but his mind is wasted. You know who this guy is right here, don't you? That's Clarence. He must be bad to have a name that is associated with being a super slave like Clarence Thomas. Stacy Dash down here. Clueless. Just absolutely clueless. Sage Steele. You ever guys that look at Sports Center, you damn women, know her, just buck dancing all over the place. And Omarosa Manigault, I could tell you something about her, but I'm gonna keep going. Support black businesses, even if it means going out of your way to do so. I mean, and I'm talking about all kind of black businesses. Support them. Spend money with them all the time if you can. Number 29, celebrate African history 365 days a year by learning something new about our story. Number 30, read the biographies and autobiographies of our heroes and sheroes. Now, this book on the left, Barracoon, they discovered that Zora Neale Hurston had a manuscript. This book just came out maybe a week ago called Barracoon. And this is the story of the last enslaved African, Cujo Lewis, that came over on a slave ship. And the book is just out. I'm reading it right now. Powerful book. Most of us have read the autobiography of Malcolm X. And you know Detroit Red, you gotta read that. And here's again another one by Zora Neale Hurston, Dust Tracks on a Road. The next one. Perform at least one political act per month. Y'all seem to be doing that in Detroit. Write a letter. Who's running for Congressman Congress seat? Is that a bad question to ask? Okay. Well, okay, perform at least one political act a month. And that's minimum. Number 32, organize a reading circle that reads one book per month. I just spoke at a reading circle of some sisters in New Jersey. They have been meeting, I mean, their generation since 1904. And I mean, the original people who founded it, they're no longer with us, but they are still reading one book a month. And literary circles used to be a big deal in our community. Form a reading circle. Another one. Place maps around your house, especially in your children's room, so that they and you will know where you are on planet Earth. You'd be surprised how many Americans don't even know where Vietnam is. They can't point to it on a map. You saw the dummy in the White House say he went to Israel a few months ago, and he said he had told the Israelis that he had just come from the Middle East. I mean, this is not a smart man by any means. No, that's a true story. True story. Number 34, on at least one night per week, turn the TV completely off. Put aside your social media and talk to your family, or if you live alone, read a book. That's right. Just turn the television off. I'm always amazed when, you'll see people at restaurants, the child, the mother, the father, and they're all looking into their cell phone. They're not even interacting with each other. And now they're saying that these things. I bought one of these things, I'm getting ready to throw it away though, it's called Alexa. That thing says things, it's like an artificial intelligence, and you can ask it things. That thing speaks to me when I haven't spoken to it. And they said there's one, and several people have reported that the thing in the middle of the night will start laughing out loud. So that's kind of, so I'm about to unplug that one, JoAnn. I'm getting ready to unplug that one, okay? Number 35, form or join an Afrikan-centered gun club in your area, like the Huey P. Newton Gun Club was formed in Dallas, Texas. People always ask me why they keep killing us. They've been killing us on the streets. Cops have since the beginning of time. They've been killing. And I've said to people there are no consequences to killing an African. There's no consequences. And we have to make it consequential. And I ain't gonna go any further because I know there's some FBI people probably in. Okay. Number 36, listen to Miles Davis' album Kinda Blue at least twice a year. This is the greatest, the #1 selling jazz album of all time, 1959. Listen to it at least twice a year. Bank at an African-owned bank. Now there's not that many left. There's only, I think, 41 left in the United States, but they got one in Baltimore Harbor Bank. So try to at least bank at a black bank. Number 38, read W.E.B. Du Bois's book, The Souls of Black Folk. 1903. That book reads like yesterday's newspaper. Read it. Number 39, try to trace your genealogy as far back as you can and give your family history to your children. I've been successful to trace my ancestry now back to 1826. And I think the next line, I mean, look, it took me like 6 or 7 years to do this. And some of it was just pure luck. But try to trace your ancestry back if you can. Number 40, if you decide to trace your DNA, use Afrikan-centered.com. I know the sister and the brother that own this company, and they're good people. And they keep saying that, you know, you see this stuff on TV like Ancestry.com and 23andMe. They don't tell you anything that much about Africa. They just say, you were born in Africa. You know, but African ancestry, and this is not an advertisement for them, African ancestry will tell you much more detail about your ancestry, your DNA. I know that on my mother's side, French, Cameroon, British, Dutch, and German. On my father's side, all African. No black, no white blood on my father's side. Number 41, if you think you have a truly good white friend or lover, you are very confused. Okay, you're just very confused. And I've heard people say this, well, I have a very good friend who's white. Am I confused? Well, first of all, you gotta say very good friends. There's, what's that guy's name? There's a white, it's a white researcher, he used to be at Cornell University, and he found out, wrote a book a few years ago, said, black people can be friends with white people, but white people can't be friends with black people. And it's Benjamin Lamott is his name. And the idea is that white people are always seeing us as black people. And black people can look at a white person and say, he white, but they don't see that all the time. So that's why we get duped into these friendships. I ain't got time to talk about interracial relationships, because again, I might step on somebody's toe. Number 42, support by money, action, and membership reparations for the transatlantic enslavement of Africans. How many of you have read Ta-Nehisi Coates'? This is online, you gotta read this. This was done, I think, in 2014 or 2015. Probably the best treatment in a magazine that I've ever read about reparations, what it is. So check that out if you have a chance. Read and study Neely Fuller's book, The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept Textbook, or as we usually call it, the Code. The one that most people are familiar with is the one in the middle, but this is the new one, which is really incredible. Like, I've been giving this to my students because usually during the spring semester, students will come to me all the time. Dr. Winbush, we want some counseling, and we know you're supposed to be good at that. And you know, it's like Mary and John. And I said, what do you want to do? They said, well, we're getting married. I said, what you going to live off of? They said, we're going to live off of love. You know, I said, we need more than that. That's good. It's a good start. And the book actually talks about the questions you should ask somebody before you get involved with them. It will actually give you, ask them the questions and see what they say. Okay? The next one. If possible, send your child to an HBCU. I listed several of them there. Send them to an HBCU. You get trained at a white school. You get educated at an HBCU. And HBCUs are under attack now. You probably already know that. You always see these articles that say things like, should we still have black colleges? You don't see Jews asking, should we still have Jewish colleges like Brandeis, or we don't say, should we still have Catholic schools like Notre Dame, or should we have women's colleges like Vassar? The only one they ask that question about are black colleges. That's right. And that's because black colleges remind this country of what this country has not done relative to black folk. And now, many black colleges are just being taken over by white people. We're in the state of Maryland, the 4 HBCUs in Maryland right now. We are suing the state of Maryland for $2.1 billion because of past issues of discrimination.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of things, and I'm just a strong supporter of HBCU. Number 45, read Chancellor Williams' book, The Destruction of Black Civilization. You know, I always tell people, say, well, where do I start, Dr. Winbush, to get a deepening in African culture? I said, read this book. This book tells you what happened to us from the very beginning to now, Chancellor Williams' book. Have a space in your home that honors your ancestors. This is actually that's my little grandson down there. I got all my kids up there. But have a place that honors your ancestors and your family in your home. Almost through, number 47. Listen to a variety of music that includes hip hop, jazz, blues, rhythm and blues, and reggae. You know, kids, you know, you stay young on a campus, and students always say, well, Dr. Ray, you listen to that old music. You know, and then they're surprised that I know a little bit about hip hop. But, you know, when I grew up thousands of years ago in Cleveland, we would listen to all kinds of music. Blues, reggae, jazz, you know, R&B and everything. Kids nowadays have a narrow range of music to listen to. And many of them just listen to hip hop, unfortunately. Number 48, almost there. Read James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. I mean, that's one of the most powerful books that was ever written. Letters to his nephew. Number 49, read Toni Morrison's Beloved. Now, a lot of my students say, Dr. I don't understand the book. Read it again and you will. This is the greatest love story that was ever told by a black author. Number 50, read the book of Coming Forth by Day. I don't like to put the other name on it. What do white people call it? The Book of the Dead. See, they don't want you to read it. So they call it the Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. People, I ain't reading that. You know, it's too spooky. Read the book of Coming Forth by Day. Again, this list is by no means complete. Add to it, take from it, and in the end, you will be more centered on your African self. Thank you very much.
I have a question I want to ask you, since this is the year of reparations. There'll be many political candidates coming before the black community trying to solicit our votes for those of us who vote and participate in that process. I think that we should have a litmus test that any of us should ask at the time, and the answer to that test will determine, and we'll let them know their answer. Be careful with your answer, because your answer is going to determine whether you get our vote or not. And that question is, what is your position on reparations?
I could tell you to read my 2 books and you'll see it very clearly. Look, first of all, brother, what you just said is so important. You know, it's interesting that white people will say our litmus test is abortion. Our litmus test is the Second Amendment, or saving whales in the ocean or something. We should ask, and we've done this in Maryland, locally, statewide, and countywide. We will ask people directly, politicians that come. Ben Jealous, remember former NAA, he's running for governor of Maryland, and we didn't already ask him. And he said yes, that's what he said. But you gotta ask them, do you support reparations? Now, a lot of them will slide by saying this, well, I don't support reparations, but I support HR 40. See, that's a slick, clever answer. You gotta ask them, do they support reparations for the transatlantic slave trade? And if they say waffle, they need to say point blank, yes. And if they say no, you know, don't vote for them. I mean, it's just that simple. You probably remember during the 2008 campaign, an Takeover member asked Barack Obama that during one of the debates. And he said, well, I don't support reparations, but I support jobs. Or I support, see, that's one of those, exactly. So, you know, I'm a strong, you know, proponent of reparations. I mean, have been, and I'll tell you, and I'm I'm not just saying that because I heard Queen Mother Moore back in 1990. It was the early 1990s. And she said one sentence that just literally changed my life. She said, everything that African people do around the earth, we are trying to repair the damage the Europeans did to us. So that's all we're doing. We're trying to repair the damage. Sir Hilary Beckles has said, who's in the Caribbean, he said all black folk have been doing around the world in the past 50 years is trying to clean, 500 years, is clean up white folks' mess.
Right.
Right.
And it's time for them to be held accountable for what they did to us. That's all.
All right, brother, thanks for coming, Dr. Ray Winbush. Michael M. Hotel, host of the African History Network show.
Let's give this brother a hand because he spreads the knowledge around this country. I mean, there's some people in, I was in Roanoke, Virginia last week, and the brother told me to tell you hello, but go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I had you on my show Sunday night, and we were talking about a number of different topics, but the topic of the royal wedding came up. So talking about cleaning up white people's mess and what Europeans have inflicted upon us. Talk about why, you know, unfortunately, many of our people watched that teary-eyed and got caught up in this nonsense and don't understand that she's marrying into a family of colonizers. Okay, don't sneak up on me, colonizer. Talk about what it was that we saw and why it's so damaging, and what Britain has done to African people around the world.
Well, I mean, look, the worst purveyor of death to African people have been the British. But see, you gotta understand, you know, Neely Fuller says the #1 tool of white supremacy is deceit. You know, I heard black folk last weekend saying things, well, this has changed the way the British deal with black people. That's not true.
No.
You know, I mean, and I know some people, you know, look, I got issues about interracial relationships. Right. I'm sorry. Right. And I hope, you know, and my issue is that they choose us like they chose us off the auction block.
That's right.
Every time I see an interracial couple, if I know them well enough, I said, who asked the first person out? They always say the white man asked the sister out, or the white woman asked the brother out. And they get caught up in that. And the other thing is those relationships are can be very confusing. Look at what happened to Kanye.
Right.
I mean, he's confused.
Right.
I didn't say Serena.
Right. Yeah. But Nicki Minaj is dating Eminem also, we just found out today.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she's confused too.
Well, see, and you'll become more confused.
Right.
So, I mean, I've had people say to me, well, look, you know, some of our great leaders were in interracial relationship. They'll say Sheikh Anta Diop.
Yeah, right.
They'll say Frantz Fanon.
Yeah.
J.A. Rogers. And we talked about that one night. And I think that what it is, if they did well in those relationships, they could have been done even better without them.
Right.
Already, we are seeing Meghan Markle being attacked. Her sister is attacking her, half-sister who's white is attacking her. Also, the dressmaker. Did you see that yesterday? The dressmaker, not the one that made her dress, but the white woman said she stole the dress. She's received more death threats than anybody else. So to me, we can get confused easily by thinking that somehow that interracial relationships are like the cure-all for racism in this country. And if it was, look at what happened during enslavement. There were interracial relationships.
Right.
Thomas Jefferson had an interracial relationship. Love relationships between black men and white women, or vice versa, have a lot to do with power. And that power is exercised in an intimate relationship. And so, you know, that's how I feel.
Okay. Thank you, brother.
And I know some people get upset, but that's how I feel.
All right, thank you.
I put together 51 $1. And I put it in a jar, cash. Third week, $50, all the way down. Every year, if you do that, 52, 51, all the way down to the last week of December, when you put away $1, you have $1,400 saved up. And I've been doing that for years. There's a group in Baltimore right now, they got 10 people doing that. So the 10 people, it amounts to about $14,000. And then they borrow it from one another and they use to start businesses. So it's an easy way to say, now some people do it in reverse, because you know after Christmas, I ain't talking about holiday, they'll start, instead of starting 52, 51, they'll start $1 the first week, $2 the second week, but you still wind up with $1,400 at the end of the year. That's enough to go to Africa. You see, I try to make it, you know, and I'm not saying if you ain't gone to Africa and you all messed up. I ain't saying that. But I think we can make efforts to save, to pay for some of those trips that we can go to Africa.
That's right.
Okay?